Welcome to Bards and Cards. This episode features the renowned English writer John Donne. John Donne was a leading poet of the metaphysical school and Dean of St. Paul's Cathedral in London from 1621 to 1631. Donne is often considered the greatest love poet in the English language. He is also noted for his religious verse and treatises and for his sermons, which rank among the best of the 17th century. He was born on January 22, 1572, to Roman Catholic parents in London, England. His father was a prosperous merchant who died when Donne was 4. Shortly thereafter, his mother remarried, so Donne and his siblings were raised by their stepfather, Dr. John Symonds. Donne studied at both the University of Oxford and the University of Cambridge, though he took no degree from either university because, as a Roman Catholic, he could not swear the required oath of allegiance to the Protestant Queen Elizabeth. After traveling in Spain and Italy, he returned to London to study law and a comparative examination of Roman Catholic and Protestant theology. In 1596, he enlisted as a gentleman with the Earl of Essex's successful privateering expedition against Cadiz, and the following year he sailed with Sir Walter Raleigh and Essex in the near-disastrous Islands expedition, hunting for Spanish treasure ships in the Azores. After his return to London in 1597, Donne became secretary to Sir Thomas Egerton. That appointment itself makes it probable that Donne had become an Anglican by this time. During his time in the Egerton household, Donne was treated more as a friend than as a servant. While there, Donne met and fell in love with Anne More, niece of Egerton's second wife and the daughter of Sir George More. Knowing there was no chance of obtaining Sir George's blessing on their union, the two married secretly, probably in December 1601. For this offense, Sir George had Donne briefly imprisoned and dismissed from his post with Egerton as well. He also denied Anne's dowry to Donne. Because of the marriage, all possibilities of a career in public service were dashed, and Donne found himself at age 30 with neither prospects for employment nor adequate funds with which to support his household. During the next 10 years, Donne lived in poverty and depended on the charity of Anne's cousin and the support of noble patrons. All the while, he repeatedly tried, and failed, to secure employment, and in the meantime, his family was growing. Anne ultimately bore 12 children, 5 of whom died before they reached maturity. In spite of his misery during those years, Donne wrote and studied assiduously, producing prose works on theology and composing love lyrics, religious poetry, and complimentary and funerary verses for his patrons. As early as 1607, friends had begun urging him to take holy orders in the Church of England, but he felt unworthy and continued to seek secular employment. In 1612, his newfound patron, Sir Robert Drury, provided the Donnes with a house in London, where they lived until 1621. Donne finally agreed to take holy orders and was ordained deacon and priest on January 23, 1615. In 1621, Donne was installed as Dean of St. Paul's Cathedral, at which he carried out his duties with efficiency and integrity. But this turnabout in Donne's professional life was accompanied by personal grief. 2 years after his ordination, Anne Donne died at age 33. Grief-stricken, Donne vowed never to marry again, even though he was left with the task of raising his children in modest financial circumstances at the time. His bereavement turned him fully to his religious vocation. The power and eloquence of Donne's sermons soon secured for him a reputation as the foremost preacher in England, and he became a favorite of both King James I and Charles I. On February 25, 1631, Donne, who was fatally ill with stomach cancer, left his sick bed to preach a final sermon at court. This was published posthumously as Death's Duel, and is sometimes considered to be his own funeral sermon. During his final days, Donne had a drawing made of himself in his shroud, perhaps as an aid to meditating on his own dissolution. From this drawing, Nicholas Stone constructed a marble effigy of Donne that still stands today in St. Paul's Cathedral. John Donne died on March 31st, 1631. Because almost none of Donne's poetry was published during his lifetime, it is difficult to date it accurately. Most current scholars agree, however, that the elegies, epigrams, verse letters, and satires were written in the 1590s, the songs and sonnets from the 1590s until 1617, and the holy sonnets and other religious lyrics from the time of Donne's marriage until his ordination in 1615. Donne's anniversaries were published in 1611-12 and were the only important poetic works by him published in his lifetime. Donne's poetry is marked by strikingly original departures from the conventions of 16th century English verse. Even his early satires and elegies, which derive from classical Latin models, contain versions of his experiments with genre, form, and imagery. His poems contain few descriptive passages, nor do his lines follow the smooth metrics and mellifluous sounds of his predecessors. One consequence of this is a directness of language that electrifies his mature poetry. His poems develop as closely reasoned arguments or propositions that rely heavily on the use of the conceit, that is, an extended metaphor that draws an ingenious parallel between apparently dissimilar situations or objects. Changing again the practice of earlier poets, he drew his imagery from such diverse fields as alchemy, astronomy, medicine, politics, global exploration, and philosophical disputation. The presence of a listener is another of Donne's modifications of the Renaissance love lyric. Donne's devotional lyrics passionately explore his love for God, sometimes through sexual metaphors, and depict his doubts, fears, and sense of spiritual unworthiness. None of them shows him spiritually at peace. Although today he is lauded for his poetry, I will speak briefly on Donne's prose. His early prose works range from witty paradoxes to a treatise on Roman Catholics' unwillingness to swear the oath of allegiance to the king, and a prose satire and a prosed satire on the Jesuit priests. In 1611, Donne completed his Essays in Divinity, the first of his theological works. Upon recovering from a life-threatening illness, Donne, in 1623, wrote Devotions upon Emergent Occasions, the most enduring of his prose works. The devotions correlate Donne's physical decline with spiritual sickness until both reach a climax when Donne hears the tolling of a passing bell and questions whether the bell is ringing for him. Like Donne's poetry, the devotions are notable for their dramatic immediacy and their numerous metaphysical conceits, such as the well-known "No man is an island." 156 of Donne's sermons were published by his son after his death. Though composed during a time of religious controversy, Donne's sermons, intellectual, witty, and deeply moving, explore the basic tenets of Christianity rather than engage in theological disputes. The power of his sermons derives from their dramatic intensity, candid personal revelations, poetic rhythms, and striking conceits. The first two editions of Donne's poems were published posthumously in 1633 and 1635 after having circulated widely in manuscript copies. The poems were sufficiently popular to be published 8 times within 90 years of Donne's death, but his work was not to the general taste of the 18th century. From the early 19th century, however, perceptive readers began to recognize Donne's poetic genius. By the 20th century, mainly because of the work of the literary scholar H.J.C. Grierson and the interest of T.S. Eliot, Donne's poetry experienced a remarkable revival. Today, Donne is primarily recognized and appreciated for his poetry. I have chosen to read 3 poems from John Donne's love poems. This first one could be considered slightly offensive these days because it deals with the infidelity and the inconstancy of women. That was actually a very common theme during this Renaissance Elizabethan period. So keep that in mind. It's very clever. I hope you enjoy anyway. Song, Go and Catch a Falling Star. Go and catch a falling star. Get with child a mandrake root. Tell me where the past years are, or who cleft the devil's foot. Teach me to hear mermaids singing, or to keep off envy's stinging, and find what wind serves to advance an honest mind. If thou beest born to strange sights, things invisible to see, ride 10,000 days and nights, till age snow-white hairs on thee. Thou, when thou return'st, wilt tell me all strange wonders that befell thee, and swear, nowhere lives a woman true and fair. If thou find'st one, let me know. Such a pilgrimage were sweet. Yet do not, I would not go, though at next door we might meet. Though she were true when you met her, and last till you write your letter, yet she will be false ere I come to 2 or 3. Now the next one is titled The Bait. Come live with me and be my love, and we will some new pleasures prove, of golden sands and crystal brooks, with silken lines and silver hooks. There will the river whispering run, warmed by thy eyes more than the sun. And there the enamored fish will stay, begging themselves they may betray. When thou wilt swim in that live bath, each fish, which every channel hath, will amorously to thee swim, gladder to catch thee than thou him. If thou to be so seen be'st loath, by sun or moon thou darkenest both. And if myself have leave to see, I need not their light having thee. Let others freeze with angling reeds, and cut their legs with shells and weeds, or treacherously poor fish beset with strangling snare or windowy net. Let coarse bold hands from slimy nest the bedded fish in banks outrest, or curious traders sleeve silk flies bewitch poor fish's wandering eyes. For thee thou needst no such deceit, for thou thyself art thine own bait. That fish that is not catched thereby, alas, is wiser far than I. And for the last, we go to one of his most famous poems, a valediction forbidding mourning. As virtuous men pass mildly away, and whisper to their souls to go, whilst some of their sad friends do say, the breath goes now, and some say, no. So let us melt and make no noise, no tear floods, nor sigh tempests move, 'twere profanation of our joys, to tell the laity our love. Moving of the earth brings harms and fears, men reckon what it did and meant, but trepidation of the spheres, though greater far, is innocent. Dull sublunary lovers love, whose soul is sense, cannot admit absence, because it doth remove those things which elemented it. But we by a love so much refined that ourselves know not what it is, enter assured of the mind, care less eyes, lips, and hands to miss. Our 2 souls, therefore, which are one, though I must go, endure not yet a breach, but an expansion, like gold to airy thinness beat. If they be two, they are two so as stiff twin compasses are two. Thy soul, the fixed foot, makes no show to move, but doth if the other do. And though it in the centre sit, yet when the other far doth roam, it leans and hearkens after it, and grows erect as that comes home. Such wilt thou be to me, who must, like th' other foot, obliquely run. Thy firmness makes my circle just, and makes me end where I begun. All right, I hope you enjoyed those poems. We will now move on to the cards. For this reading, invoking the spirit of the poet John Donne, I have chosen the English Magic Tarot by Rex Van Ryn, Steve Dooley, and Andy Letcher. So, let's see what Mr. Donne may have for us. I call on the spirit of the poet and preacher and essayist John Donne. I get the impression that the minister in him, oops, these are really slippery cards, is somewhat disapproving of my using a tarot deck, but the mischievous poet in him is intrigued. Let's see what we have. The Knight of Swords, Justice, and the Knight of Wands. Interesting, two knights. I wonder if they represent aspects of himself. But right away I see a connection here between the Knight of Swords and Justice. Swords usually represent intellect, thought, rationality, and yet this knight is shown rushing headlong into battle. This is indicative of a conflict between the heart and the head, and the solution is to bring balance. See, Justice is holding the scales, is to consider carefully what our next step will be. I get the feeling he did not always do that, but take into account that your actions have consequences and find a way to harmonize heart and mind. But as any true poet probably would, often the heart's going to win. This is a knight that represents passion and drive. So I would say that John Donne is telling us, try to temper our passions. And there is a lot of emotion in the world these days, a lot of anger, a lot of lashing out. So I really get that. Follow your passions, but consider them first. Always consider what your actions will do, what consequences you may have to pay. So his advice for us is to follow our passions after carefully considering what we stand to lose and what we stand to gain from them. Yet I get from him that the heart's going to rule the head. All right. Well, thank you. I thank the poet John Donne for being here for this Bards and Cards. It has been a long time coming. This one has been in the works for a while. I will try not to be so long with the next episode. Thanks for watching.